Hello, Vegas baby fans. I'm back. Oh, let's put my glasses on here. How are you all? I took a week off. Wasn't feeling that creative, and I'm actually not today either. This is a rough week for me. Always is. If you don't know, I don't know how many people know and don't know, but on Thursday, the 9th, my husband of 28 years passed away 12 years ago. And I was thinking back about it. I always do when this happens. Oh, and here's Elvis sitting right next to me. Look at him. Look at him. Look at him himself. That's you, buddy. He's like, hey, I'm on TV. Yeah, it's my show. So get lost. Um, So I'm going to try to do some shows today. First, I'd want to do a shout out to Ed Farmer. He passed away last week. I think it was last Thursday. He was the um, radio announcer for the White Sox from 1992 to last year, 2019. He would have been again this year, but he passed away unexpectedly at the age of 70. And he also played for the Sox back in the 70s. He was a pitcher and a really nice guy. We met him. I had back in the early 90s, middle-ish 90s, wrote him a letter because I found out he had had a kidney transplant. He had kidney disease. So I was like, wow. So I wrote him a letter and I said, my husband is really sick. He had, yeah, so it had to be, I don't know, probably 96, 97 maybe. And I said, my husband had a kidney transplant. And I said, but he's still very ill. I said, my husband can't even play baseball with his son. That's how bad it is now. So, and I said, but my son, and this is when Michael was a true Sox fan back then. He didn't convert over to the Cubs until later on. So he's sort of both, but I think he's more of a Cubs fan. Well, it's fine. That was Bill. But he loved Frank Thomas, as we all did. So I wrote Ed Farmer a note, and I just said, my husband can never play ball with his son, and and Big Hurt, as he was called, it was a fan. My son loves him. My nephew loves him. So I was like, if there's something you could do to make something special. So his assistant called me on the phone a couple weeks later. I really never thought I was going to hear anything. But his assistant called and said, Ed got your letter, was very moved, and he would love for you to come down. How many, we'll give you tickets. You'll sit in the front row right above the Sox dugout. And you will meet Frank Thomas. You'll go out on the field when he has batting practice, and your boys and you can all meet him. Look at Elvis. He's sitting on my lap. I love you, buddy. Anyways, so I was like, wow, okay. So he gave us 7 tickets. It was my sister, her husband, me, Bill, my son Michael, and my nephew Darren. And we all went down. It was during a week. It was a weekday game, and we went down to Comiskey. I still call it Comiskey. And unfortunately, that day he decided not to do batting practice, which, as it turns out, after the game, Frank, he should have taken it that day. So, but they said, don't worry, you're going to meet him. So they took us down to the locker room. So we went down to the locker room, we were waiting, and out comes Frank Thomas. And we're all like, oh, he is a big man. And so he met Darren and Michael, and he talked to him, and he autographed baseballs for both of them, took a picture with both of them. And me and my sister, I'll never forget it, because he came out, and he's a tall man. He didn't need no steroids. It was all Frank. And trust me, I can tell you that. And he was standing in these spandex shorts, and, he's tall, and I'm short. I'm 5'1". And I was like, whoa, Frank, put that thing away. And me and my sister were like, whoa. So I'm telling you, with those shorts on, if you can use your imagination, it was all Frank, okay? But it was really cool. And then we ended up sitting in the front row of the game. We had a blast. It was the coolest thing for the boys, for Michael, even for Bill. All of us. We had so much fun. And I think the Sox won that day. And the next day, there's this TV station back in Illinois that sometimes would replay games. So the next day, Michael was flipping around the TV and he goes, "Mom, the game we went at is on TV and I could see us." Because the time, sometimes the camera goes by the dugout, shows the players, and there we were sitting, and he goes, "Mom, you're ordering a beer." Great. So that was funny, and that was a really good thing. So my rest in peace, Ed Farmer. He was a really good guy, and I loved hearing him on the radio, so I'm going to miss him. So today I thought I'd make you laugh with a few stories about, I reconnected with some friends over the weekend that I used to work with at this company that I worked the bulk of my time all at one time. I worked over 18 years there. And I had started in the 80s, and I started in the warehouse. I was a warehouse picker. I would pick orders. It was for they had two divisions. They had a diagnostic medical division and then research. I worked for the diagnostic. It was Beckman Instruments. And basically all the stuff that we sent out was to go into machines in hospitals for testing, for diagnostics, etc. So I worked in the warehouse. I was the only woman. It was all men and me. And then we moved into this big building in Arlington Heights. And they only had two other huge distribution centers in the United States. So we were pretty big. And we set this warehouse up. But I kicked butt for a long time pulling orders. I always outpicked every one of the guys. You had to go into big refrigerators. You had to go into freezers to pick stuff. Yeah, because some of this stuff was temperature controlled. So it was a really crazy job. Then I worked my way. Well, when Bill got sick in 92, Bill was sick, and then, I got to step back. So our boss, his name was Martin, and I have never met a person, the man who ran the warehouse, Martin, more despicable, mean-spirited, loved to start trouble, a liar, could not be trusted. I mean, he was discriminative against women. He was just disgusting. He's the worst human being I've ever met on this earth. He was a really bad man. I mean, to give you this, when his mother passed away, his family told him not to come to the funeral. What does that tell you? And I can't go into too much detail. All I can say was he was really fat and ugly. But I can't go into his ethnicity because I don't want people to think I'm prejudiced, because I'm not. And as years went on, when I worked in the warehouse and stuff, he was just a horrible human being, and he just berated all of us, and he was just despicable. He was disgusting. And it got to a point where the company were getting so many complaints from the people in the warehouse and stuff that, they wanted to get rid of him. So they tried, but because of certain things back then, if you didn't have enough proof, you just couldn't fire somebody because of his ethnicity. They would have had a lawsuit. And trust me, he wanted to be fired so he could sue them. There was no ifs and buts about it. And they knew it, and they didn't want to deal with it. So the thing is our warehouse, out of the 3 distribution centers, we were the best one. Our numbers knocked it. We were like 98% of getting orders out the same day, which was huge because hospitals needed their stuff. And they went all over the United States. The big rigs would pull in, and we would put our products on big rigs, FedEx, and UPS. At the end of the day, we had a 10-bay, or trucks could pull in. There was 10 slots for the trucks. It was big warehouse. And they were like, how are we going to get rid of this guy? So they tried. And many a times, and what was happening is his bosses kept circling through. He'd have a boss for a year, and then he'd lose one. He'd have another one, he'd lose one. So just as a boss was getting close to try to fire him, they were gone. So this went on for a while. And he was just, at one point, I actually thought about seeing if we could hire somebody maybe to knock him, kill him. I'm not kidding. So it got to a point where Now Bill was sick. This is when he was first sick. And we got the word that they were going to close our warehouse down because they said, that was the only way they could fire this dude was to shut that warehouse out. And they built another warehouse in New Jersey. They had a small building there, so then they made it larger and they were going to move our distribution center to New Jersey, and we were all going to get laid off. And that's what happened because of this one man. So I'll give you little hints of what he would do, okay? And then we'll go to there. But I was at that point, um, I was in the warehouse office. I had gotten promoted, and now I was working in the warehouse office. I was nowhere on our floor. I was inventory control, so I had to do inventories of products every day. It would pop up on a list, and then I'd have to go count, make sure the count was right with the computer, so that we knew we had the right product. Sometimes you found out we didn't, so then we knew there was picking errors, etc. So I was in the office with him. So we had a little cubicle. It was like a metal with walls, glass walls. It wasn't fancy. And then I had my desk, another desk for another person, and then his desk was over to the side, and he had a little cubicle with, you couldn't see him. He was just in there. And when vendors would come in, like trucking vendors or vendors for popcorn, to sell them popcorn, the little things that you put in boxes, bubble wrap, boxes. People are always coming in to try to sell, to get you rid of, be a vendor, but anytime a woman came in, I'd walk them in there, they'd sit down and he'd take their picture. I'm not kidding you. Every single woman, if they were working, and some women would be like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Nothing. I just like to take pictures of people." He would take Polaroids. Okay. So we're like, okay. And he was just a pig. He would burp. He would fart. It was disgusting. So I tell people this because I am sure this is what happened. So um, he would be sitting in there, and do you remember when they had those big metal desks that we would sit in offices? People all had them. I don't, now they're so much nicer. They're not like they were. We had big clunky metal desks, and a lot of them, the middle drawer would pull out, and when it pulled out, it made noise. It was like a metal noise. So I swear to God, I'm not kidding. On my husband's grave, I'm sure this is what he would do. All of a sudden, one day, me and this other girl was working. She was on the computer behind me working, and we would hear this noise, like boom, 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 and it was the desk drawer. Like something was pounding. I wish I had metal so I could describe it to you, but it was like something was pounding against the bottom of the desk drawer, and it went on for like 5 minutes. We're like, what the hell is he doing? Well, this started happening regularly. I, to this day, believe he would take those pictures out that he took of the women and he was whacking off in there. Swear to God. When that noise started happening, her and I would get up and leave. Disgusting human being. Disgusting. So I was so then we find out we're being laid off. Now, Bill's in a coma. I swear to God. He's in a coma, and I find out I'm losing my job because the company couldn't handle it anymore, and they wanted him gone. So what they did was they had to rebuild a warehouse, and they laid off all of us to get rid of that pig. Just to get rid of that pig. As a matter of fact, we got very close a couple times when we would call, and a lot of his bosses were out in California, and that was the other thing. The warehouses were, the main offices of Beckman Instruments were in Brea, California, and Fullerton. And that's where a lot of his bosses were now because that's where the corporate was. There we go. So we had an office up front in Arlington Heights in this building we were in, but they were doing other things. So at one point, his boss was there, and then they stopped, and they were always in California. So they would come out. So what would happen is then we would meet with these bosses behind closed doors, and me and this other guy who ran the warehouse. He was a warehouse, supervisor. And he's like, we got to get him. You guys got to get proof. And we're like, so then we started getting some proof where he was taking product from Beckman Instruments and giving it. He had a friend who owned a box company, and he gave him Beckman's product to take pictures next to his boxes, meaning Beckman was working with this vendor on his boxes, which we weren't. Well, that was illegal. So we took pictures and we sent them to California, and we would have to talk to these bosses at our houses because that's how much afraid we were of this dude. My one buddy, who was a supervisor in the warehouse, he was like, I'm afraid he's gonna like put drugs in my car and set us up. I mean, that's how low and despicable this man was. He was gross. He actually did touch the girl that worked behind me. She was like my partner in crime in the office. He grabbed her boob one day, so then there was a sexual harassment. He never really touched me because I pretty much know he thought I'd probably punch him. Plus, I worked my ass off in that office. I made him look really good. So he didn't get on me too much and this guy who ran this in the warehouse, but he just everybody else. He was just so despicable. And he would steal supplies and he was just mean. So one day I was telling my girlfriend about him, and Sue, and I said, I just can't stand this pig. He's despicable. And she goes, I'm going to call him up and prank call him in his office. So stay there at 10 o'clock. Be in your office. See, these were the days where, first of all, there was no call IDs, where you could see people calling because you had to pick up a phone, and the calls would go through the switchboard. So Sue calls and asks for Martin, his last name, and the call gets transferred to. And I'm sitting in my desk, right outside his desk, and I hear, what? Who is this? And he gets really mad. He's like, how dare you? Whoa, who is this? And he slams down the phone. And I'm just like, oh my God, I'm trying not to laugh because I know it was Sue. And he comes up and he goes, who was that? And I go, I don't know. I didn't transfer it to you. He goes, did that come from the switchboard? And I go, I guess. So that big fat beast went walking up to the switchboard, and the woman who ran the switchboard, he goes, did you transfer that call to me? And she goes, the one that asked for you? Yeah. And he goes, what did they say? And he goes, they just asked your name. That's all. And he goes, all right, never mind. And he comes back, and she did it again. It was great. I think she did it twice, but it was so fun. I mean, I was dying laughing. So then I went out and told the guys in the warehouse, and he was so pissed. He was pissed for the rest of the day. He mumbled in there, who was that? Blah, 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 blah. And I was laughing. It was great. I was like, thank you, Sue. That's when you could do real prank phone calls. I know it's childish and we were adults, but it made my day. And the other thing about working with that man is a lot of you don't remember because you're too young, but there will be some people who remember this. There was a thing called the Unabomber back in the early 90s, and he was sending explosive packages to people. And people would open it up and they'd blow up. And this went on for a while. And I'm not kidding. I was so worried that somebody who hated, because he would fire people all the time. And people would get pissed. And he treated them so horribly that everybody hated him on this earth. And I was so scared at one point. I'm like, I went to management up front. I said, what if somebody sends him an envelope and he blows up? And then somebody he fired was starting to send him weird messages, leaving him messages on his car. He'd come up. So then the company had to put locks on all the doors, and then we would have to key card in, which nobody did that back in the 90s. I mean, now it's, yes, but nobody did that back in the early 90s. And because of this guy, but we're all like, okay, everyone, because everybody was afraid that somebody was going to come after him. I'm not kidding, because there were so many people making threats on him. And I know a lot of people didn't know that. And so they locked up all the doors. You couldn't get in, except for we're like, well, now wait a minute. We're in the warehouse. There's 10 bays where trucks pull in. The door is open. Anybody can walk in. So they were like, oh, yeah. So then they had to have a security guard. They had to hire a security guard who had to stand by the dock doors at the end of the day so that nobody, whoever this dude was that he fired, and I can't remember, I kind of remember, but I don't, didn't come in because he threatened them. So I was like, at that point, then I'm like, if somebody comes in with a gun to shoot that fat pig, I'm probably going to go down too. I mean, I would come home and tell Bill, I'm like, I'm seriously scared, And it was just like, oh my God. I'm trying to look at my notes on some of the things that, let's see. That's pretty much it. But he was really, yeah. And so that was my life at Beckman, the early days. And then, so then they laid us off. Bill's in a coma. I'm like, I'm going to lose medical insurance. So I was really blessed. It was the best company I've ever worked for. Not the best job, but the best company. I worked in the warehouse, then I became inventory control, then I went up. Okay, so then when I was being laid off, a lot of the women up front and people from California were like, she's a great worker. She's always been in our corner. You know, she tried to get rid of that pig. We got to keep her job. So they're like, we're going to. So at one point they came up to me and said, listen, we can put you on part-time, and that means we'll let you keep your insurance, but we only have part-time work up in the front. Will you take it? I'm like, yeah, my husband's in a coma, I need a job. So if you can imagine the stress, being laid off and my husband's in a coma. So then, right at the end of right before we got laid off, where they completely shut it down, they called me in again, and because I was at the hospital every day. At that point, they were shutting down the warehouse, and the bosses in California said, "We're going to pay you. Just go be with your husband. Don't even worry about it." So I didn't really have to worry about it. So, but then they called me in. Actually, it was the day Bill woke up. They called me in, so I went in that morning, and they said, we've got a job for you, and it's called up here. It's called the RGA coordinator. So it's basically when returns come in from all over the country or whatever, you're going to process the paperwork. Okay, no problem. So now I was in an office and I had a full time job with full time benefits still at Beckman, which was awesome. And then I had that job for about maybe a year. And then I worked my way into being a customer service specialist where you had just sales reps. You didn't place orders. We weren't the ones placing the orders. That was done in California where the hospitals would call up and place orders. We need a pallet of this or that, or you know we worked with the sales reps. So you had like, seven, maybe six sales reps. My sales reps were I was in Midwest, Ohio, um, Michigan, Indiana, and Kentucky. And my big universities, I worked with the University of Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, Indiana, all those, that. And so I had sales reps. So I worked with them, and we would do their quotes. We'd get their quotes typed out. They'd say, okay, this is what we're going to give them a deal if they buy this from us. So that's what we did. And then I actually, when I worked for that company, I had some really good sales reps. I got pretty good at this job. I was really good. Actually, I won a couple awards. I don't brag on myself too much, but I won 2 awards for best performance of a year and got money and a trophy and whatever. I don't know. And I don't know if it was a trophy, but, money. And then there was a dinner and blah, 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 blah. And then one time I got to go to Michigan and visit. So I went to Michigan State and University of Michigan with my sales rep. Loved East Lansing. I said, when I came back, I said to Bill, man, I'd love to move there. It's just a beautiful town, On their campus, there was ivy on the walls, on their buildings. Just so great. I had a great time. And then we went to University of Michigan, complete opposite. Everything's concrete. I didn't like that as much. But so it gives you an idea what I was doing. So I was so grateful to them. And then we ended up moving out of the Arlington Heights building because there was this big warehouse that they weren't using, and they were only using the office. So then they finally sold that, and we moved to Schaumburg. And there I worked until we got laid off in 1998. They came and told us that they were condensing everything, and because there was a lot of little offices like us out in the it was funny because there was 3 other small offices around the United States like us where it was just offices where there was service coordinators, and then there was us, and then some other secretaries and stuff. So they wanted to move everything back to, they wanted everything to go to corporate, and they wanted to sell off everything in the field and everything move out to California. So the day that happened, they strategically, all the 3 field offices at the same time, closed the phones, shut everybody down, went into a building and to an office. I remember sitting in the lunchroom and somebody goes, what are they doing here? And you could see some big wigs walking in, and we're like, really? They're from California. What are they doing here? So they proceeded to lay us off. I had worked there over 18 years. And if I would have made it to 20, that was my goal. You would get flown out to California. There was a huge dinner for everybody. You would get recognized. You got a plaque. You got a bunch of money. You got put up in a hotel for a weekend. I wanted to do that so I could go see my friend in California on the company. Didn't make it. But they did offer us when they laid us off. If you wanted to move to California, you could. They'd fly you out there and look around, but because of Bill being sick, all his doctors, we needed them so bad in Illinois, so there was no way. And I really didn't want to go out there because what we had in Illinois wasn't much. It was a house, we had a big yard, but we couldn't afford it out there. So I'll never forget that day, man. Over 18 years, that's a long time. And I started when I was 22. So never took a drug test because you didn't have them back then. So, can you imagine? But anyway, so I'll never forget it. So we come out of the office. We all go back to our desks, all shocked. And I go to call Bill. And he's like, oh, I was just going to call you. And I said, oh. He goes, I got some bad news for you. And I said, well, I got some bad news for you. And he goes, all right. I said, no, you go first, Bill. And he goes, oh, the hot water heater just broke. And I'm like, mine tops yours. And he goes, what? And I go, I'm getting laid off. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah. So that just sucked big time. And everybody in that office, to give you an idea how much people love that company, the person in our office, the least they had been there was 12 years. Everybody went from 12 years up to 30 something years. People never left that company. It was really a great company. And when people out in California started finding out that I was going to get laid off, they were just like, come here, we'll give you a job. And I was like, no, I can't. So, you know what? At the end of the day, they did warn us. We had 2 months before we got laid off, we got to clean things up and stuff. And you got a year. I got a year and a half for every year I was there, a week's pay, and then you got an additional 6 weeks for not suing the company. So I got a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but I was like, I have to go look for a job. I didn't know. I was freaked out beyond belief. Freaked out. The only good thing of it was that our last day was like July 31st or something. So I was applying. By the second week of August, my neighbor across the street, her daughter-in-law worked at Baxter. So she's like, I know you don't know her, but, because Baxter was very hard to get into back then. You had to know somebody or you'd be ground floor. So I had an interview. I dropped this woman's name and I actually got a job in their customer service department. But it wasn't going to start for another month. So I actually, the only good thing was I got to spend the month of August with Michael at home and Bill, and that was really nice. I just chilled. I knew I had a job, but going to Baxter, I worked in their customer service department for 2 years, and that sucked, man. Sucked the big one. You're constantly, can I give you fries with that order? It was really like that, But I did not like that. But then I moved on, so we're not going to go into that. I mean, I had so many jobs at Baxter, it's not even funny, but a shout out to Beckman because I was in the warehouse. I was a 22-year-old, didn't know what the hell I was going to do. I didn't have an education, and they worked my way up, and I learned a lot, which carried me through the rest of my years. And I was always regarded as a really good worker. But that pig, Martin Bart, oh, I almost said his last name. Oh my God. He was really a pig. Just the things that man would put us through. I would come home and be like, oh my God. But you know what? It paid really good. It was a really good paying job. And when I was inventory control, I went in every day an hour early. So I would have 5 hours of overtime every week because I was so busy. I couldn't keep up. And I was getting it. So I was like, rock on, because I'm a morning person, so it wasn't a problem. But yeah, so those are my Beckman years. But I met a lot of great people. Like I said, even my sales reps came to my 40th birthday party and a couple of them. So it was, but you got to hear the stories about that fat pig that, oh my God, I swear to God, I was like, I thought at one point, God, I bet my brothers could take him out. And because I was thinking no one would care. No one liked him. His own son didn't even like him. He was living with his mother and his stepfather. Then, oh, here's another thing, tells you. His wife died, so now the son is living with the stepfather, and the son didn't want to come move in with him. He stayed with the stepfather. Yeah, see, despicable pig. Oh my God, he would spit into his garbage can. Yeah, you'd be in there and you hear, and you'd hear it in the. That's when we had those metal garbage cans, And it was just like, especially when I was early being pregnant with Michael and morning sick. I didn't have it, but your stomach is always a little upset, and you would hear, and I'd be like, worst human being in the world. I mean, if you could just seen him, he was just, his face was big and round and he was fat. And, oh, and that was the other thing. He would wear these pants super tight. He would tuck in all his shirts and he had these huge belt buckles. And the fat would just roll over it. It was just like, oh my God. So, yeah, I worked there 18 years. I know. But not all of it was there. I mean, I worked. When did he got we got laid off in 92 because Bill was in the coma, and I started in, I don't know, 80, 83 maybe, 82. I just think I started in 82. So half my time was in the warehouse, less than half my time, and the rest of it was in the office, which was way better. But yeah, you know what? I sometimes I wonder. He crawled out from under a rock. I'm pretty sure he didn't come out of anybody's womb. I'm pretty sure. So I hope that guys just kind of made you laugh. You got to learn about my Beckman years a little bit. The first half of them and the second half were awesome until I lost that job. It was the best company. I mean, when Bill was sick, they took care of me, man. They were just awesome. And it was, like I said, it wasn't my favorite job, but I learned a lot. So I to this day I am always grateful. Plus, out of my two pensions, I get a small pension for Baxter because I kept coming and leaving and coming and leaving. Kept going. I went there 3 times, went back and forth 3 times, and they never gave me my, like, all my years back. So they would always make me start over. So, but I do get a small pension from Baxter, but my real pension comes from Beckman. So to this day, I'm grateful. And so that's it. I hope I'll be back tomorrow. Maybe it'll be a song, and I don't know. See. Shout out to my birthday, my friend's birthday, Jenny. So everybody stay safe. I mean, I won't lie, this is really starting to get to me. This week is going to be a really rough week for me, I know, because of 12 years ago, what this week was like. But we'll talk about that later on in the week, okay? I love you. Keep on rocking and rolling. And don't forget to turn on the Vegas Baby Show starring Maylin tomorrow. Okay? Stay safe. Stay healthy. I love you guys. Rock on.